Imagine yourself as a parent, waking up at 2 in the morning because your Ring doorbell has alerted you to movement on your front door. You pick up your phone to see who it might be, but instead of seeing someone walking up to your door, you see your very own child running away, never to be seen again. Zach Cregger's newest hit horror, Weapons, explores this feeling of dread, but not from the perspective of a single family grieving from this mysterious incident, but instead from the perspective of an entire town suffering from an alarmingly enigmatic tragedy. The way Weapons presents its story draws inspiration from several movies, as many others have already pointed out. Most notably, the movie draws from Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, especially in how it introduces several different characters that interact with each other and the story, whether it be directly or indirectly. That being said, Weapons is an amazing movie, and if you're a fan of the horror genre, you've likely already heard someone say this, as there is a lot of hype surrounding this movie. And naturally, when there's a lot of people telling you that something is good, it's gonna breed a demographic of people that feel inclined to tell you that that same thing is overrated and good, but not that good. I'm here to break through that mold, tell you why it's actually that good, where the movie might fall short, and most importantly, break down some of the different symbols and hidden meanings, as well as analyze the recurring themes that appear throughout the story. The most interesting thing about Weapons, at least for me, was how Cregger partitioned the story and had the audience follow different characters throughout the entire plot. This division of the story allowed us to really analyze and dissect the different actions of each character and see how differently they all react when faced with the tragedy that personally affects them. But even more so, how they react when they are confronted with the fact that this tragedy affects the entire town. The way Cregger chooses to divide the story, and the moments in which he decides to switch the perspective, makes the town feel like a chessboard. You begin to map out what incidents happened where, and you create timelines of certain encounters. It removes some of the linearity that is inherent in cinematic storytelling. The story no longer progresses from A to B, but instead progresses from B1 to C3, and you learn just exactly where everyone fits in a story that surpasses that of a single character. Cregger changes the story from checkers to chess, and you slowly find out that the bishops and rooks that you believed were in charge of the game are pawns, and the real queen was in plain sight all along. Though a partition story isn't a revolutionary cinematic technique, Cregger has mastered the use of it, but this isn't Cregger's only weapon in storytelling. As a horror fan, I tend to lean more towards scary movies that employ tension in unique ways to frighten its audience instead of using dry and predictable jump scares. I prefer build-up, tension, and symbolism over loud noises, scary makeup, and overtly evil motifs. Though, to be completely honest, I am a sucker for demonology and religious motifs, but be smart about it. And Zach Cregger is. Throughout the movie, Cregger sneaks in symbols of sycophants and parasitism, most prominent in Justine's nightmare where the word parasite is written on the chalkboard, and in Marcus's home where he and his partner are watching a documentary on parasites, ants, and cordyceps. This symbol of parasitism is present in other ways as well, however, specifically in the witch's actions, Gladys. Gladys's origins are obscure and aren't completely explained in the movie, but because of her mystical powers and her appearances throughout many of the characters' dreams, many have referred to her as the witch of the story, most likely due to Archer's use of the term when vandalizing Justine's car. Gladys, being a parasite that drains the life out of her victims, can even be seen through her physical appearance throughout the movie. Her use of bright and gaudy makeup begins to wane as the story progresses, needing less and less makeup as the kids she abducted start to slowly rejuvenate her. It's especially evident in the few scenes where the audience can see her with no makeup or wig on. In the scene where Alex peeks into her room through the crack in the door, the camera starts at her legs and slowly pans up to her face. We can see the blisters and welts along her wrinkly forearm, until Alex catches a glimpse of the witch's bare face. Her blistered face and lips are looking back at Alex with a sickly demeanor. When Archer infiltrates Alex's basement at the end of the movie, however, right at the chilling jump scare that precedes the movie's descent into comedy, the audience catches a glimpse of Gladys in the dark. Though it's only for a second, Gladys looks livelier, if you can even call it that. with more hair, and the blisters around her face aren't as prevalent. I tried to get a screenshot of it all, but all I could muster was this blurry kiss cam of a shot. Gladys's parasitic obsession with youth and rejuvenation reminds me of a junkie with an addiction, and though there's a literal junkie with an addiction in the film, James isn't the only character that battles with addiction and self-sabotage in weapons, which leads us into another symbol and motif that is present throughout the film. Though James' drug-addicted character is a clear symbol for addiction, there are several other characters that display their addiction in one way or another, and more interestingly, they have self-sabotaging tendencies that lead them into a self-destructive spiral in one way or another. In an interview with Collider, Josh Brolin has said that every character in this movie depicts a unique reaction that Kreger had in response to a traumatic event in his life. This traumatic event likely being the death of his close friend and collaborator, Trevor Moore, who suffered an untimely death at 41 years old back in 2021. More so than James, I believe Justine is a better metaphor for addiction than most characters in the movie, bar Gladys and bar Paul also. So maybe she's not the best, but still a great one. After the town's condemnation of Justine at the school conference, Justine resorts to alcohol. On her way home that night, Justine hits the liquor store and stocks up on her favorite bottle of vodka. 2, to be exact. I'm more of a tequila guy myself, not gonna lie. She gets spooked when someone rings her doorbell and no one is there, and then finds her car vandalized. The next night, after realizing that no one can do anything about her car and that the principal is against her talking to Alex, Justine goes and gets drunk at the bar. It's here that she meets her booty call, Paul, an arguably terrible decision. Justine gets him drunk and has sex with him. Not only was this man happily, maybe not so happily, married, this man was sober for what I can only assume was a considerable amount of time due to Donna's justifiably insane crash out. We know Donna crashed out because she pulled up on Justine when she was at the liquor store stocking up again the afternoon after she got freaky deaky with Paul. Look, I'm no stranger to a 3-night bender, but I think Kreger's intention behind Justine's drinking is much more symbolic of Justine's response to trauma than it is a portrayal of How to Rage 101. Though Paul is the character whose alcohol addiction the plot focuses on the most, we see Justine drinking and shopping for liquor much more often than anyone else. In a time of crisis, Justine resorts to her bad habit of drinking and pity parties, as said by Paul. Not only may Justine be an addict herself, but she sabotages herself and others with a victim complex and woe is me mentality. As a result, Paul's sobriety and his marriage are caught in the misfire, and she oversteps several boundaries with Alex in the pursuit of truth. If she hadn't staked out Alex's house that night, Gladys wouldn't have had strands of her hair and had a way to weaponize Marcus on her. And Marcus may not have even arranged a meeting with Gladys, potentially keeping Marcus and his partner alive and Justine and Archer safe. On another note, Paul himself has instances of self-sabotage as well. Why did he agree to meet Justine? Though it isn't confirmed by their conversation and long-time friendship, it's unlikely that this was their first time hooking up. Paul implies he has no intention of drinking with Justine by ordering a Coke, but agrees to meet up with her in a bar in the first place. He implies he has no intention of hooking up with Justine by saying he can't stay, but he tells Justine that he and Donna aren't happening right now. Paul self-sabotages by unjustifiably lashing out in anger as well, as seen in his second meeting with James. James is seen approaching the police station and, in a fit of rage and fear, likely due to the fact that he unlawfully attacked James the day prior, he intimidates James, the only real lead to finding the children, and sprints after him. This leads to Paul investigating the house on his own instead of calling for backup or alerting others of where he's going. Though, I'll concede that Paul most likely reacted so violently to James approaching the station because he may have thought James was there to file a complaint against an officer, that officer obviously being him. The last person I want to talk about in regards to addiction and self-sabotage is the Lady Witch herself. Gladys's addiction is a bit more metaphorical than the two previous characters I mentioned. Throughout the movie, Gladys's motivation for kidnapping the kids and putting them under a trance is that it would cure her sickness. Though she initially believed that Alex's parents would suffice in rejuvenating her, she quickly found out she would need more sustenance. Much like how James is frequently seen scrounging for money, asking others for change, or stealing in order to sell to a pawn shop, Gladys also needs a third party in order to get her hits. She employs Alex to get personal items from each of the kids, and this ultimately leads to her downfall. This is where I believe Gladys's self-sabotage comes into play. Her obsession or addiction to youth lead to her biting off much more than she can chew. Kidnapping one kid may have been safer, perhaps even 2 or 3, but kidnapping an entire class of students was far too ambitious, even for a witch with access to the supernatural like herself. Other YouTubers and fans have surmised that Gladys may have some other powers that suggest she may have been able to influence the attention of the townspeople away from herself. Archer's plan to follow where each individual kid ran off to based off the ring footage is a pretty intuitive and logical plan, which makes a lot of fans wonder why no one else, the police or detectives, thought to do this before. Some believe that because of her ability to supernaturally appear in others' dreams and haunt them, she may have some ability to influence the police away from searching her house or investigating Alex further. Kind of how Pennywise is able to brainwash or control the adults of Derry. What I'm trying to get at is how Gladys sabotages herself into getting more people to question the incident. 17 kids is far too many kids for any adult to just gloss over. If she truly does have any control of the police or any other people of authority, it was Gladys's hubris in thinking that no other civilians would try to investigate these disappearances that led to her demise. And most of all, her addiction to this parasitic ritual led to the kidnapping of 17 children, which in turn led to the gruesome, albeit very funny, dismemberment of her own body. Horror movies all sit on a spectrum that varies from slow, patient build-ups that reinforce the overarching plot to fast, jump-scare heavy narratives that waste no time throwing the audience into a state of shock. As a horror fan, I personally enjoy movies that really weaponize tension and have audiences on the edge of their seats. And I tend to dislike movies that overuse jump scares. I enjoy symbolism and eeriness more than I do the adrenaline shot of a jump scare that quickly fades, but I understand that not everyone wants to do a scavenger hunt or mental gymnastics when they put on a movie to relax. Kreger's Weapons has found a very happy medium between the two. Though there is a bit of symbolism and things to decipher throughout the movie, they are not as hidden as they are in, for example, Ari Aster's movies. Kreger employs several jump scares, but they're creative and aren't reused. And most of all, Kreger's use of tension has quickly become one of my favorites among all horror directors. There are so many bone-chilling, unforgettable scenes throughout this movie, like Justine's stakeout, for instance. In a scene where Justine falls asleep in the middle of a staking out. What? Oh my god, and
take your time.
there are so many bone-chilling, unforgettable scenes throughout this movie, like Justine's stakeout, for instance. In a scene where Justine falls asleep in the middle of staking out Alex's home, she's approached by a menacing silhouette carrying scissors and running towards her car in an eerie, unnatural way. The silhouette approaches the driver's window, where Justine is sitting asleep. You can't help but feel that Justine's death is imminent. Is this silhouette going to stab her, slice her neck? Instead, the silhouette walks around the other side of the car, out of view of the camera, and we hear a door open. We don't actually see the silhouette go in the car, but the audience recognizes the sound of a car door opening, and terror begins to fill the theater. Scissors creep into view, and instead of slicing Justine's neck or stabbing her in some way, they snip a strand of her hair, and the scene ends. Kreger's approach to tension relies much more on what the audience expects out of a scene, and then flips it on its head by providing sensory cues outside of the visual. It's creative, innovative, and so refreshing to see in a modern horror movie. That being said, at this point, I feel it's necessary to point out that Weapons isn't a perfect movie. Neither are its characters, and neither are you, which is what the movie is about. Lately, I've been a bit frustrated with the horror movie community because after every big anticipated release, I feel like there's a huge wave of nerds that feel inclined to alert everyone that they didn't get scared. Didn't scare me, not scary at all. Comments followed by complaints about plot holes that genuinely feel like the reviewer didn't watch the movie plagued the internet the day after Weapons release. I saw this happening after the release of Longlegs as well. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but as horror fans, I wish this community would look past jump scares more often. Jump scares are fun and necessary in order to cash in on all the tension a movie is building, but I don't think they should be at the core or the most important piece of a horror movie. Weapons was beautifully shot. And though the movie may not be the pinnacle of horror, it's a wonderful movie and an honest attempt at pushing the genre forward. Kreger's debut as a horror director with Barbarian blew me away, but as Josh Brolin said, there was something missing. Kreger's cinematography in Weapons is beautiful, dreadful, and refreshing. So if you've grown tired of the dull horror that streaming services have been constantly pumping out, take a chance on Weapons for a real fright. Yes. Alright, this is like my 10th take. I don't know how to not make a corny outro apparently, so we're gonna speedrun this bitch. This is the outro. Please like and subscribe, comment maybe, bye.